Good day, everybody. My name is Pattie Grimm, and I'm a senior woman business leader with companies like Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson Medical Devices, and VMware. And I also run my own training consulting company that specializes in helping companies connect the dots between business strategy, business results, and talent. I'm a specialist in leadership development, team leadership, team development, but really have a really strong focus and passion for women's leaders. I've been a women's advocate for probably more than 30 years, back to my banking days when I first started hosting these conferences for women. So this is a new conference presentation that I'm developing. So I'm going to rehearse it here and put it out on my social media so I can get some feedback. This is going to be the longer version that includes some bonus content around how to actually implement some of this, because as women today, we're still faced with so many challenges in terms of how we're perceived, how we're seen. And I think it's time that we redefine or define a new women's power code and a new version of leadership that comes from the sense of what women bring to the workplace. All the research shows, extensive research across hundreds of different companies, some of the biggest in the world, Gallup, McKinsey, IBM, Forbes, all say the research supports that when you have a diverse leadership team and diversity with women on the board and women at all levels and people of color at all levels, the company's more productive, they're more profitable, they have higher customer satisfaction, they have higher employee engagement. All of those things directly impact the bottom line. Yet we're still here preaching that we need to make and have more women leaders in positions of leadership. So this position is about redefining the power code and how we perceive leadership and women. Women are still faced with so many challenges. And as if this was a conference presentation, I would throw out these questions. What are the biggest challenges you face as women today in trying to break the glass ceiling and fix the broken career rungs on the ladder to success? Like, today's world is not so much a career ladder, it's more like a rock climb that you need to climb to one level. Sometimes you need to take a lateral move to move up, but it's all about how do we fix those broken rungs, because as women start to move up the positions, they reach for that next career ladder or that rock that's slightly over to the right or left to move and advance faster, and it's gone or it's broken. So we're still underpaid, underserved, and underrepresented in all levels of leadership. In government, in healthcare, they spend multi-millions and millions of dollars trying to find a pill to help men be more virile and more productive. But yet they only come out with a pill to help women with menopause recently that actually really works. And so we don't have the kind of money and research when it comes to getting financing for our businesses. We are much less likely to get venture capital funds to run a business. And most women's businesses run out the backs of their own finances and refinancing their house or using their credit cards and not getting the venture capital that we need. More women were laid off in COVID. They were slower to be hired back, and in many cases, they've been hired back at lower pay. Women are promoted on performance, while men are promoted on potential. This is a real challenge because women have to prove themselves that I'm good enough as an individual contributor to become a team leader, then I have to prove myself as a team leader, become a supervisor, a manager, a VP, etc., and move up the career ladder. Yet men get promoted on the fact they have potential to be a great leader. So I'm going to hit on some pretty interesting topics today. And I'm also going to not talk about just what we need to do, but how you can do it as a woman leader wherever you are in your organization. During and after COVID, 1 in 4 women were downsizing or leaving their careers, especially women in tech. We're losing more women in tech than we're gaining. And we're going to talk about imposter syndrome and perfectionism and how that is the one thing that really gets in our own way is when we get into imposterism and perfectionism. So we're going to talk about all of this. I want to share a recent interaction we had. My husband and I were staying at a very nice resort down in Laguna Beach, California, visiting my sister. And I was sitting in a restaurant waiting for my husband, and a gentleman walked up and said, are you with a husband or a boyfriend on this trip? I said, well, yeah, I am. I'm waiting for him for dinner. He goes, well, I'll wait for him to come because I wanted to talk to you about, would you be interested in coming listen to a timeshare presentation um, that I have, and that you get a free weekend at this hotel for 4 nights, free weekend, 3 nights, full use of all the facilities, massage, all this stuff, if you come listen to my 90-minute timeshare pitch. And I looked at him kind of perplexed and said, don't you think women make most of the decisions when it comes to where we go on vacation, where we live, what housing we have, what schools we put our children in, what insurance we buy, what timeshares we buy? Don't you realize that women make most of those decisions and maybe consult their significant other or spouse? I wouldn't buy your timeshare anyway, especially after this conversation. But I will tell you, there are a number of times in my career, and I put together some fun avatars for this, where I've been described as bossy, pushy, bitchy. I've been called a pushy broad by one gentleman, where I simply said, "Thank you. I'm trying to make my point clear." Would you say that if I was a man? So we have all these things that are going on, and that's really some of the things that are holding us back are these microaggressions and this unconscious bias that we're going to talk about as well. And we're going to talk about creating a new power code, a new way of looking at power and how organizations and what we view as a successful leader. There's this thing called the likability factor, and also there's the double bind paradox. The likability factor is that as men move up the organization, they become more likable, more credible, they're more respected. As women move up the corporate ladder or move up in their positions, many times they're described as less credible and they become suspect. How many times have you heard someone say, "I wonder how she got that job"? You never heard that about a man. I wonder how he got that job. And there's this double bind paradox. There was a recent study at Harvard. It was a case called Heidi and Howard. Recent students, so within the last 5 years, were given two case studies. The one case study was about a leader named Heidi. The other was about a leader named Howard. All the details in the case were the same, exactly the same. The only thing that was different was the name. The students described Howard as strong, powerful, competent, team player, strategic decision maker. Same facts, just the name is now Heidi, and she was described as pushy, aggressive, out for herself, not a team player, slow to make decisions. Same case, and recent students were asked to evaluate this. And don't let labels define you. So when I worked for Microsoft, I was there for 15 years as an FTE and 5 years as a consultant, consulting back to Microsoft. And at one point, I moved to Singapore. I took a job as a director of CPE, took customer partner experience in Singapore, and ran the Asia Pacific region for 3 years. And I came across this Pantene hair commercial from the Philippines. And there's a link on the page that I'll put a PDF of this presentation on my post when I post them, called "Don't Let Labels Define You." And you can watch the video, but what I did is I took some screenshots. So the first screenshot shows a picture of a man, and the label in the background says boss. Same picture, but now with a woman, it says bossy. The gentleman standing up at the podium is persuasive. He's getting his point across. And the woman is seen as pushy, aggressive, and bitchy. The man's working late, staying long hours, staying at the office after hours, not going home to be with the family. And he's called dedicated. The woman's called selfish because she's not home with her family. I'll never forget one time at a party, some gentleman had the nerve to ask my husband, how could he let me travel like I did? Because I traveled globally for all 20 years with Microsoft. I traveled all over the world. And we moved to Singapore for 3 years, like I said. And gentleman asked my husband, how can you let her travel to all these places? And my husband's response was, let her? I'm lucky I get the itinerary a week before she leaves. Gentleman walking down the street, looking really spiffy, described as smooth. She's described as being a show-off because she cares about how she looks. And the last one shows the husband and wife are two people at a sink, and it says neat or vain. Don't let labels define you. Don't let someone call you pushy, bitchy, or bossy without having a recovery or a way to get around that. And I've got some things in here for us. So what we're facing today as women, and this also includes many people of color, what we're women facing today are these unconscious biases. There actually was a study done at one point about sportscasters. And when they were first introducing women sportscasters, most men and women preferred a male sportscaster because they thought they were more knowledgeable, or they didn't care for the tone of the woman's voice. That's an unconscious bias. That's something that we all have and we all need to be aware of. So to demonstrate this, I want to do a quick little experiment. I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to imagine you're taking your family or your best friends on a beautiful vacation that you've been planning for months, maybe 6 months to a year, which time is a wonderful vacation. I want you to close your eyes and imagine you're rushing to the airport, you find a parking space, you go through TSA, they open your bag, they pull out all your stuff, you got to stuff it all back in. And you walk on the plane and you say hi to the pilot. As you're walking down the aisle, you make eye contact with the woman across, the person sitting across from you, and the person says, "Oh, I'm a CEO of a tech company." And then seated next to you is a lovely couple, elderly couple that's celebrating their 25 years of marriage. I want to open your eyes. Did you imagine that pilot was a black man? That's an unconscious bias. Did you imagine the elder couple was two men that have been married for 25 years and are completely devoted to each other? That's an unconscious bias. Did you imagine the woman? Was it my friend Janet, who's a CEO of a very successful tech company, with her Wonder Woman cup, but you thought the CEO was a man? That is an unconscious bias. We all have these blind spots. What are they and how can we overcome them is the big question, both as women and as we're working with other people. Our brains take in 11 million pieces of data at any given time, but we can only handle about 40 of those. So we make quick decisions, and sometimes those quick decisions lead to an unconscious bias. We see a resume from someone with a name that we can't pronounce, and we assume that person is from another country when they might have been a Native American that was here before we were. Or we hear something or see something. An interesting experiment was done that in the 1970s. Almost all symphonies were 100% white men until they started doing blind auditions, just like the blind audition show, just like the show that where they spin the chairs. They don't see the person singing who might be a 12-year-old boy singing a Whitney Houston song or a elderly man singing a country song. But when they did these blind auditions, it increased women by 46%. Just like doing blind interviews of not having the video camera on when you're interviewing a candidate early in their recruitment process. So you don't know what they look like, how old they are, what their sex is, what their race is. It really will help increase that unconscious bias. So what is an unconscious bias that leads to what we now are facing as women as these microaggressions? Women and people of color are facing a ton of microaggressions that we'll talk about and how to overcome those. Unconscious bias, also known as influence bias, is an unconscious form of discrimination and stereotyping based on age, race, sexuality, authenticity, ability, age, and so on. It's not cognitive bias that we're aware of. That's a mental pattern that we have that perceives our sense of reality, actually prevents us from reading our goals, which is creating a diverse workplace where everyone can bring their magic to work every day, regardless of who they are, what they look like. I remember interviewing a woman for my second book that I'm working on. And she is the CEO of a marketing company. And they're a small marketing company located out of Austin, but one of their customers happens to be Aflac. And they developed the Aflac duck that is now so famous, and everybody knows what Aflac is and what Aflac does because of their marketing campaign and how they did things. And she has this comment about one of her values is celebrate everybody's magic they bring to work every day. Everybody's different. Everybody has different talents and skills they bring. We need to create environments where everybody can bring that magic to work every day. She says, I don't care if somebody's got 45 tattoos, if they've got piercing all over their body, if they're a good worker and they do a great job and they bring their full ability to work every day in their heart, mind, and soul. So we have to move from awareness to action. A microaggression is what I think a lot of women are facing today in the workplace. It's a subtle, kind of unintentional form of prejudice. Rather than an overt declaration of racism or sexism, it takes the shape of an offhanded comment. Oh, I didn't realize you were into sports. And I grew up in a sports family and I played sports my entire life. And I still play sports. I play pickleball now and I'm addicted to it, like a lot of people. It can be an inadvertently painful joke or a pointed insult. For example, a person might comment that an Asian American speaks very good English, even though they were born and raised in the United States. Another might ask an American Indian student where they're from because they have a different name or they happen to look different from us. A woman may cross the street because she sees an African American man walking towards her during night. These are the microaggressions that we experience, and women are experiencing them when it comes to how we are perceived as leaders, how we're perceived as making decisions, how we're perceived as being assertive and not, or seen as aggressive and not assertive. Those are all micro unconscious bias that are implicit, hidden, unfair judgment, reactions. They're unfair, and they really inhibit productivity in the workplace and the ability for women to thrive in this new workplace. Until we was Carl Jung was a very, very famous psychiatrist and psychologist, and he said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will always dictate your life, and you will call it fate. So you didn't hire that candidate because you couldn't pronounce their name. And it could have been the best, most amazing candidate that you could have had on the team. Maybe a man decides he doesn't want to work for a woman, so he declines a job that he might be willing to take. So it really means we have to battle these unconscious biases. Women have them too. We have them. I remember I went to many years ago when I was working for an organization, we went to a diversity inclusion workshop, and they divided us into groups by who we were, like white women, white men, Black people, Asians, African, da 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 da. They divided us into groups and they gave us flip chart stands. And they had us write down all the words or things people say about us, those microaggressions, those stereotypes people might have. And the workshop absolutely exploded in the facilitator's face. And we actually all complained to corporate, and they canceled the workshop at lunch because it got so bad. But we have to battle unconscious bias by finding new habits. And I remember one of the things somebody had written on the flip chart about African American people is they're good dancers. Well, several people in the African American group says, I can't dance at all. And I'm really insulted by that comment. And that was making the conscious unconscious, making the unconscious conscious. So to find new habits, we have to drive awareness and concerted effort to improve. Interview that candidate with a name you can't pronounce. Put somebody on the team that maybe is very different from you, because that's the best way to have the best team, is when people are different and bring diverse skills and perspectives and how they do things. Invite others into your inner circle in your meetings. Take somebody to lunch that you've never met, that you've never interacted with before in another team, and get to know them. Mentor, coach, and people outside of your circle of connections. Expand your thinking and develop a growth mindset. There used to be a theory that at a certain age, minds stop growing, people stop learning. Well, that's been defunct by neuroscience leadership, that we will continue to grow as long as we're willing to have a growth mindset and look at the world with our eyes wide open and be curious and explore and ask questions. Tell me more about this. I'd like to know more about your background. Question your thinking and past assumptions. And let's throw some of these assumptions. You all know what assume means, right? It makes a you know what out of you and me. Let's stop the assumptions. Let's look at people for who they are. There's been an evolution in the workplace I want to talk about for just a couple of minutes, right? So back in the old days, back in probably the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, maybe even to the 70s, we had the good old boys club. It was a club mostly of pale, stale, white males in a room with cigars and smoking and telling off-color jokes and slapping women. It was okay to slap a woman on the ass or tell some off-color joke to somebody in front of somebody else. And it was an acceptable way of working. It's just the way things were. Many times women were assumed to be a secretary. So if they were invited to a meeting, they were asked to clean up the coffee cups afterwards. I remember one of my mentors at Microsoft when I had first gotten there. Her name was Sherry Bukowski, and I'll never forget her. We were in one of those typical meetings where after the meeting there was cups and bagels and coffee cups and Starbucks cups and things everywhere. It was obviously in Seattle, Washington, so it was Starbucks on every corner. And the meeting was over and I started to pick up the cups. And I hear out of the back of the room her booming voice say, "Put the damn cup down." And I sort of shook up. Okay, Sherry, okay, well, that's fine. So, do you see the men picking up the cups? You never do that in a meeting. Never pick up your own trash and cup and throw it away and hope others follow. We sort of evolved out of the good old boys club. That was more implicit bias or implicit sexual harassment or implicit things. It was not unusual. I remember I was a very young 21-year-old Had just been promoted to a job when I was working at a bank, and I was going to be in my first management role. And the VP of the division wanted to take me to lunch, and it was one of these 2 martini lunches. He had 2 martinis, I had iced tea. And walking back into the office, he grabbed my hand and put it in on his chest. I was terrified and didn't know what to do. So I did pull my hand away and I just walked in a different direction. But that was an acceptable behavior. So we went from the good old boys club to the bro club. This probably was in the 2010 through 2020s ish time frame, where I call it the bumping culture. Fist bumping, hand slapping, machoism to a T, overly competitive, putting people down, compete, compete, compete. Well, not only do many women not like, I'm very competitive, so I love to play sports, and so it didn't bother me. But a lot of people do not like that competitive dog eat dog environment, putting somebody down just for the heck of it, putting somebody down in front of others to make them look bad so you look good. And many people from other religions, background, or countries don't do well in that environment either. So luckily, we're getting past the bro culture. And now we need to create an environment where women and people of color have a seat at the table, but not a broken seat at the table. I just did a webinar 2 weeks ago for WIT Network called Building a Seat at the Table That Doesn't Suck. Because many times we're invited and given a seat at the table, but we don't have any decision making. We don't have any voice, and nobody listens to the ideas that we put out. So we need it to all be diversity, equity, and inclusion. So diversity is being invited to the meeting. Equity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice and a decision-making voice at that table. Now, in doing my research, because I'm a research geek, for this webinar I did on Build a Seat at the Table That Doesn't Suck, I watched the recent movie called Shirley. I think it's on Netflix, and please watch it. It's a great movie. It was all about Shirley Chisholm. Now, a lot of people don't know this or don't remember it from history, but Hillary Clinton was not the first woman to run for president. Shirley Chisholm was. She ran for president. She was the first African American and the first African American woman elected to Congress. And she also was the first woman to run for president and almost make it all the way through. And then she eventually dropped out for the good of the party. But one of her great quotes is if there's not a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And I say, bring another table and a whole bunch of chairs and bring a bunch of people with you that are diverse, people of color and women with you to those meetings to expand the thinking. But she said, we don't make progress by standing on the sidelines and whimpering and complaining. We make progress by implementing ideas. So I want to throw out the idea of defining a new women's power code. A couple of years ago, a great book came out by Katie Kay and I'm forgetting the woman's name. I'm sorry. This is a rehearsal. This is raw. Katie Kay said the current model for women is not working, so let's redefine and create a new women's power code. So we're going to do that here today. We're going to start creating our own women's power code. One of the insights out of the book, and the information is there on Amazon on the power code, more joy, less ego, and maximum impact for women and everyone, is the 3 pillars. How men define power is men define power as having power over someone or something. I have the power over the department. I have a power over the budget. I have power over a team of 45 global people, right? Women define power as power with. So a man does a good job because he defines power as how he power over them and say, yeah, I did a great job. A woman does a great job, and many times she'll say, oh, it was my team and I did it with people, through people, with projects and events. I have power with, not power over. It also gets down to how men and women tend to decide. And I'll use an example here in just a minute. Men tend to decide alone. They've got a problem, they go in the office, they come back with a recommendation and solution. Women tend to collaborate to make decisions. And I was called in by a senior VP to coach one of their women leaders, Sally, because she was not perceived as being likable and she was not respected. And I thought she was taking too long to make decisions. So I said, so I gave Sally and Tom a problem to solve. Tom ran out of my office, went in his office, put together a presentation, put together a solution, came back and presented it at the end of the day. Sally brought her team together. Here's the problem we need to fix. What are some ideas? Let's do some brainstorming. Let's collaborate. Which of these decisions is best? What are the pros and cons? She came back maybe 2 days later with a better decision, but the VP had already decided to go with Tom's decision because he came to him first. The problem with implementing projects and ideas is there's a timeline. There's timeline to decide and timeline to implement, and say the time is this long. Okay, so Tom went off and made a quick decision, really quick decision, but implementation is going to take much longer because there's no collaboration, there's no input, there's no ideas. It's simply just his brilliant idea that he thinks is the best thing since sliced bread. Sally takes longer to decide, but implementation is much shorter because she's already built buy-in and collaboration and commitment to the potential solution. The other challenges we have is how we reward men and women. Men are promoted based on potential or the promise to be a great leader. He has the potential to be a great leader. Women tend to be promoted based on proof or performance. So I am a team leader. I performed really well on that job for 2 years. I earned the right to be promoted to the supervisor level, and I earned the right to be promoted to the manager level and the VP and the GM, etc. That doesn't work. So we need a new power code. So if I was doing this live, which I will in my conference presentation, I would put people in small groups and ask them to brainstorm at least 3 principles for the new woman's power code. Our principles. There was the bro code. There was the good old boys club. Now we're going to have the new women's power code. And each principle should start with thou shalt. Now, I'd give the groups a few minutes to chat about this, and I'd say, okay, so there's something magical in the number 7. There's 7 days of the week. There's 7 deadly sins. There's 7 wonders of the world. There's 7 summits. There's 7 colors in the rainbow, etc., etc. There's a magical and mystery around 7. You can even look it up and do the research on it. So these are my 7 new power code rules for women and men. Thou shalt rise up. Thou shalt stand up. Thou shalt have their voice be heard. And as I'm standing up, I'm lifting all other women up with me so we all rise and become successful. Thou shalt stand up for myself and what I believe in. I will never compromise my values. I just recently quit a company because I could not deal with the values and how they were treating people. Thou shalt be authentic, genuine, vulnerable, a good listener, a good team player. Thou shalt be a full, holistic leader who is authentic, genuine, and vulnerable. Thou shalt invest in my own development and play to my strengths. I wrote a book for women leaders. I spent 3 years researching with over 3,952 men and women leaders about what makes women leaders. I found 5 common success secrets. The number 1 success secret was play to your strengths. Play to your strengths. Be strong, play to your strengths. The second principle was stand up and create a personal leadership vision and values to stand on. The third principle was stand out, be more valuable, visible, and vocal. Show up to those big meetings, ask for the agenda ahead of time, sit in the front 2 rows and ask a question so you'll be seen and heard. Number 4 was put yourself number 1 on your things to do list. And number 5 was pay it forward and make the next generation of women workers even better. Thou shalt support, not sabotage, collaborate, not compete. One of my friends, Michelle, wrote a book about how men perceive women and what's holding women back. And the number 1 thing they said that men said is that women compete against other women and they don't lift each other up. Number 1 reason. Thou shalt surround myself with people who support me and build me up. People that fill my cup so full that it overflows. And get rid of those people, the naysayers, the sabotagers who tell you you can't do it and that don't believe in your dreams. And thou shalt leave the world a better place for women today, tomorrow, and forever. So let's put this in practice. Let's make this our power code and how we move forward. Let's be proud of who we are and let's reframe the conversation. What would you do if someone interrupts you when you're talking in a meeting? Here's a possible option. Excuse me, I was talking. When I finish, you can have the floor. This came from Christine of Wit Network. I had a more direct approach. Like I said, I've been called bossy, bitchy, pushy broad, all these words before. I had a more direct response. I happen to like Christine's a lot better. Another woman shares a great idea in a meeting that goes unheard. It's my job, your job, to say, Sally had a great idea. I think we should discuss. Or if a man comes up and says the same thing, saying, I think Sally just said that. You're being too pushy, too broad, too bossy, too aggressive. Would you say that thing? Would you say that same thing if I were a man? I was just expressing my opinions based on my experience. Situation 4. This is actually a real situation. I was coaching a senior woman leader whose boss told her she was too emotional because she happened to get very passionate in a meeting and come to tears. And the response would be, you hired me for my passion and commitment to this job. I'm not emotional. I'm just passionate. So there's some real scenarios I think you could use. So this is a bonus section, right? I always hated at Microsoft when we hired a big consulting firm, McKinsey or any of the big 8 consulting firms to come in and help us improve our efficiency or operations. And they always would come in, they do all this research in the background, and they come out with this big, huge manual. So here's how you fix the problem. Here's what you need to do, but they never told you how. So this is my how section. She was powerful, not because she wasn't scared, but she went on strongly despite the fear. See, courage isn't being fearless. Courage is having the commitment and ability to move past the fear to get to the other side. It's like facing thing and moving forward. So we're going to start by talking about self-worth. Your self-worth is determined by you. That's why it starts with the word self. You don't have to depend on someone to tell you who you are. We have to think about our self-worth as these 3 things. It's your self-acceptance. I accept the fact that I'm 5'3" and I'm always going to have to hem pants because they're always too short or too long. I accept myself for who I am and I play to my strengths. My self-esteem, what I say to myself, right? I practice my passion. I practice what I do and I make sure that I'm constantly saying I'm good enough. I can do this. I'm good enough. We're going to talk about perfectionism and imposter syndrome in just a minute. And my self-confidence. You got this. You can do this, girl. And when we're able to do that, it helps you become that strong, effective leader, not woman leader, leader. I look forward to the day when we say, she is a great leader. He is a great doctor. We don't say he's a great African American, Asian, whatever verb noun you want to put in front of it, leader. We simply say they are great leaders. Helps you achieve your dreams and what you always wanted to do. Helps you develop unstoppable confidence. And you're like that little girl saying, yes, I can. It helps us communicate our ideas more clearly. Use less words. Create crisp, short messages. Have the courage to speak up. Ask for that agenda for that next big team meeting. Go out and formulate some ideas. Stand out from the crowd. Be visible, be valuable, be vocal, be heard, and be the best version of yourself because everybody else is taken. So one of the things in my research that I came across is something I call the good girl syndrome. The good girl syndrome starts when we're little girls and we're always told to be perfect. Be the good girl. Get the good grades. Have the good friends. Go to the good school, go to the good university, get a good career, have a good significant other, be a good team player, be a good mom. This good leads to perfectionism. Perfectionism can be defined as a personality trait of someone with overly high performance expectations, being perfect. Nobody's perfect. I get, pick your favorite movie star, famous person, whoever it is that you think is absolutely perfect. I'll just pick Jennifer Lopez. Beautiful, smart, talented, creative, acts, sings, does all these wonderful things, runs a company. Now she's got another bra business or something. Appears to be perfect on the outside, but I guarantee you inside there's this little girl with overly high performance expectations, perfectionism, combined with being overly self-critical. It wasn't good enough, combined with caring too much what people think. We're little boys I'll use an example of soccer. The little girls go to play soccer. Their uniform is perfect. They have the perfect little bows in their ponytails or pigtails. They're dressed perfectly. They look perfect. They fall down on the field, and we all say, "Are you okay, Emma?" The boys show up. They're lucky they have two socks that match. Their shirt's probably on backwards. They probably forgot to brush their teeth, and they didn't even bother to brush their hair. They fall down on the field, and we all say, "Tommy, get up." It comes from the games we played and what we were taught. See, boys are taught competitive game with scores. Many games girls are taught as cooperative games with social interaction, like playing house or doing something similar. Boys are snips, snails, and puppy dog tails, and girls are sugar and spice and everything nice. Boys are raised to take risks, fall, get up, shoot for the moon, be brave, work hard. We're raised to be perfect, play it safe, and get all A's. I got one B, I think, in my entire career from kindergarten to college. I was devastated. My dad was devastated. My brother, if he got a C instead of a D, was taken out for ice cream. I felt horrible because didn't get an A. Shoot for the moon. Girls get higher grades in science and math, but yet they stop raising their hand around between ages about 10 or 12. Girls start raising their hand and asking questions. Boys get the lower grade because we're told to avoid risk failure and protect yourself. The woman who did the TED Talk on Girls Who Code and found the Girls Who Code company said that when boys are programming and they're doing something like Java, they'll say to the professor, "There's something wrong with my code." The girls who are doing the same thing, "There's something wrong with me." Bright fifth grade boys see it as a challenge. Bright fifth grade girls are quick to give up, even though they have a higher IQ. Men apply for a job when they have 60% of the skill required, and they get the job. Women only apply when they have 100% and they still hesitate, saying, "Oh, I need one more year of experience. Oh, I need to finish that college course. I need to finish that certification." We need to start taking risk and raise girls that shoot for the moon, fall down and get up again and dust them off. And okay, let's go. So, how do you move from perfectionism to peak performance? We start by raising brave girls. Imposter syndrome is a collection of feelings of inaccuracy that persists despite evident success. Imposter syndrome sufferers from chronic self-doubt, sense of intellectual fraud, that even though proof is to the other side. I'll give a very clear example. When I worked for Microsoft in 2004, I went to my boss and I went to my husband and said, "I think I would love to do an international assignment." And I interviewed for two jobs, one in Germany to run the business excellence team for Europe, and one in Asia to run the customer partner experience team across all of Asia and live in Singapore. Munich or Singapore. When I accepted the job, I called my husband from the big worldwide conference, sales conference we were having in Florida. And his only question to me was, "Do I pack flip-flops or snowshoes?" And I said, "Pack your flip-flops. We've got 4 weeks. We're moving to Singapore in 8 weeks." That's the kind of support you need from a significant other. But to move from perfectionism, which is all about blame, to peak performance, which is maximizing your self-worth and your self-compassion with forgiveness, instead of saying things like, "I'm a fake," when something doesn't go right, say, "This is new to me. I'm still learning." Instead of saying, "I'm not smart enough," "I made a mistake and I'll learn," right? It's not fake it till you make it. It's do it till you own it and learn it and develop that skill you need. It's going from thinking my ideas are dumb and nobody will listen to me, saying things like, "Well, this may be a dumb idea, but," instead of saying, based on my experience, here's what I think we need to do. We also qualify things. "I'm just a programmer. I'm just a supervisor. I'm only a whatever, fill in the blank. I'm only a coder." We have to stop talking down about ourselves and really believe my ideas are valuable and useful. It's going from saying I don't belong here to I haven't established my support group yet or my tribe. I had an incredible support of family and friends when we lived in Singapore, and we still keep in touch with them, even though we left Asia in 2007, and we still keep in touch with about 90% of the people we worked and were friends with in Asia. We still keep in touch with a lot of them. So it's finding that tribe, finding that support group, somebody that can help you up. Now, building your self-worth takes a mind and body connection. A research study done by Berkeley University found that women who combined power with empathy were more respected and advanced faster. So you combine that strength of being a strong leader with compassion and empathy and understanding, and you use your EQ more than your IQ. It also shows in your body language. It shows in how you present yourself. Like when somebody walks in a room who's confident, you can feel it. When somebody's not confident and they kind of walk in with their head down or maybe fiddling with something like their phone or the papers they're working with, that doesn't display confidence. It shows in your body. Before I do a presentation, before I present to a client or I even have a client meeting, I'm usually in the bathroom stall, using my power pose with my ears over my shoulders, my head looking straight forward, my hands on my hips, my feet shoulder distance apart. And I say, you are bold, brave, and brilliant, and you're going to rock this, girl. It builds, there's a wonderful video on building up your confidence and the power of body language. It's also in height and space, taking up height and space in the room, not making yourself small. And the hands tell the story of empathy. By simply using your hands, you're showing empathy to someone. So those nonverbal power symbols matter. On Zoom calls, make sure you only have to look nice from the waist up. I'm sitting here in a nice top with a nice black sweater on, with some jewelry that I went to Kohl's and Target and Penny's and bought a bunch of nice necklaces when during COVID, because I knew I was going to be on camera a lot. On the bottom, I have on a pair of cutoff shorts and flip-flops. But all they see is this part of me. I also make sure my picture is the same size as everybody else. So I'm not like looking like this and I'm not looking down. So that all shows having a powerful handshake, look someone in the eye and say, my name is Pattie Grimm. I help companies connect the dots between business strategy, results, and people, and rocks and symbols. So when I'm standing in that bathroom stall before that presentation, I have a little rock I carry in my purse and I say, you're brave, bold, and brilliant, and you're going to rock this, girl. So that really helps mentally build up that confidence level. So what I want you to do, if you're questioning your self-worth, your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your self-value, all of those things, I want you to flick the circuit breaker. We recently bought a house, I guess it was 2 years ago, but the house has got some wiring issues, and it seems to be in our whole neighborhood. Several other people post on Facebook that have the same problem. So we have a refrigerator in the kitchen, we have a refrigerator in the laundry room. And if I'm running the dishwasher, both refrigerators, the air conditioners, because I live in North Texas where it's hot as you know what most of the time, the circuit breaks. So we have to go out and we have to flip the circuit breaker. So if you have any self-doubt, lack of self-confidence, lack of self-esteem, flick that circuit breaker or change the channel. If you don't like the channel your life is on, change the channel to something that you enjoy, your favorite show, whatever that might be. Use power messages. I'm proud of the woman I am today because I went through one hell of a time to becoming her. If you watch some of my earlier videos, I talk about my almost near career and life ending crash from rock star to rock bottom and back stronger than ever, which gave me the motivation to write my book and spend 3 years doing all those interviews. But I have a mantra. I am, I can, I will, I do, and I soar. And I repeat this to myself at least once a day, and many times, several times a day. I am, I can, I will, I do, I soar. So in order for you to thrive and have that woman's power code and be the best you could be, picture yourself being successful. Write a personal leadership vision. I have a whole series on personal leadership vision. Use power poses, rituals, music, symbols. When I had that crash and burn moment when I went from rock star to rock bottom, I had my son put together a playlist of music I could play on my phone. And it was songs like, What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Stronger, I Think I Can Fly, This Girl Is on Fire, Fighter, all of these songs that I would play as I was walking my dog through the forest to pull myself back up again. Believe in yourself and ability to improve and develop the growth mindset as I can learn and do anything. And I have a choice. I want to play to my strengths and I have a choice to what I want to do. Practice agility and learn from your ups and downs. And practice something, my last technique I'm going to pass on to you is something called an after action review. One of the amazing people I interviewed for my book was Colonel Deb Lewis. Colonel was in the first class of women to attend and graduate from West Point, which was traditionally a men's only, white men's only military university in the United States. Women were not allowed. People of color were not allowed in many cases. So she went, attended, completed the boot camp, and completed a 30-year career in the military, commanding troops all around the world. When I interviewed her for my book, I asked, was there a difference between a man and a woman leader? And she taught me this thing called this after action review. And one of the things she said that was a difference between a man and a woman leader that has stuck with me to this day, and I probably lose using most of my presentations, is women see around the corner. So I said, well, what do you mean by that, Deb? She says, well, a man has a meeting. He's got an agenda. He goes through his meeting agenda. He gets to the end. He says, okay, great job. Let's all get back to work. Let's go implement that idea. The man didn't notice that half the people in the room didn't agree with the decision, and they weren't going to go implement it anyway. They're going to, in fact, they might even try and sabotage the idea. Several people were completely different engaged. The woman leader will have that meeting, but she'll notice the room. She'll notice that someone was completely disengaged and say, it seems like you have something on your mind. Would you like to give us some of your insights? She will see the difference and actually call that out. But what she did teach me was this after action review that the military uses after every operation and mission. And this will help build your emotional agility, your resiliency, and your strength to come back from every kind of setback. When something doesn't go well, you blew a presentation, you blew a customer meeting, something happened that didn't go well. Ask yourself and your team, if it's a team project, what happened? Why did it happen? What did I learn? What will I do differently next time to create a bit different or better result? If something goes well, you want to repeat it. So ask yourself, what happened? Why did it happen? What did I learn? What would I do again to achieve the same or better result? Very powerful to use with you and your team. Sorry, my dog is celebrating. She stood in the storm, and when the wind did not blow her away, she adjusted her sails. I would close out this conference presentation by asking people to huddle with a group of 2 to 3 people and exchange emails and names to say, what am I going to start doing? What am I going to stop doing? What am I going to continue doing? And have them just go do it. This is a list of posts that I have available that are recent ones I've done on LinkedIn. And this is how you can get in touch with me. I empower mid-career women to go from burnout to breakthrough, from stagnation to success. I have a number of programs around talent optimization, connecting the dots between leadership, team strategy, and team business results. I have a one-on-one Empower Her program, one of my signature program, which is one-on-one or small group coaching program over a series of 5 to 6 weeks. And I have a Leader Her program, which is a comprehensive leadership program development for women. Please excuse the typo. I will fix that before the presentation. My LinkedIn information and my email. Thank you and have a great day. I would love feedback on how I could improve. Thank you and have a fantastic time. So this is a presentation I will be doing in a future conference, and I wanted to get it out to folks to get some feedback. And I would love to hear your insights, ideas. So please email me. The easiest email is pattiegrimm@live.com, PATTIEGRIMM @live.com. Thanks and have a fantastic day.